The crash and the choice, the rain hammered against the windshield like bullets from heaven's own gun. Ethan Rivers pulled his beaten pickup truck to the side of Interstate 85, squinting through the downpour at the twisted metal that had once been a black Mercedes sedan. The luxury car lay on its side against the concrete barrier, steam rising from its crumpled hood like the breath of a dying beast. He shouldn't stop. He had learned that lesson the hard way, growing up in foster care after. Foster care. Mind your own business. Don't get involved. Keep your head down and survive. But something about the way the car's headlights flickered weakly in the storm made his foot find the brake pedal anyway. Ethan had been driving back from his night shift at the warehouse, bone-tired and looking forward to the cramped studio apartment he could barely afford. At 22, he had aged beyond his years, carrying the weight of a childhood spent bouncing between homes that never wanted to keep him. His clothes were secondhand, his truck held together by prayer and duct tape, but his hands were steady, and his heart, despite everything life had thrown at it, still beat with an instinct to help. The accident must have happened minutes before he arrived. No other cars had stopped yet, and the rain was washing away the skid marks on the asphalt. Ethan grabbed the emergency kit from behind his seat and stepped into the storm. The driver's side door was crushed beyond opening, but he could see movement inside. A woman, maybe in her 30s, was trapped behind the wheel. Blood trickled from a cut on her forehead, and her eyes were closed. She was dressed in what looked like an expensive business suit, the kind of clothing Ethan had only seen in magazine ads or through the windows of buildings he would never be allowed inside. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" he called, pressing his face against the passenger side window. The glass was spiderwebbed, but intact. The woman's eyes fluttered open, unfocused, and filled with confusion. "Where?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. Ethan tried the passenger door. Locked. He looked around desperately, then grabbed a piece of debris from the road and wrapped it in his jacket. "I'm going to break the window. Cover your face." The glass shattered on his second strike, raining down in crystalline fragments. Ethan cleared the opening and squeezed through, his work boots crunching on broken glass as he landed in the overturned car's interior. Up close, he could see. She was beautiful in a way that spoke of privilege and power. Her dark hair was pulled back in what had probably been a perfect bun before the crash, and even unconscious, her posture held an air of authority. A gold nameplate had fallen from the dashboard. Victoria Sterling, Chief Executive Officer Sterling Industries, CEO. The letters might as well have been written in a foreign language. Ethan had never even met someone who worked in an office, let alone ran a company. But right now, titles didn't matter. What mattered was the way her breathing was shallow and the fact that he could smell gasoline. "Victoria," he said, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I need you to stay awake." "Can you move your legs?" She blinked slowly, trying to focus on his face. "I can tune my seatbelt." The belt was jammed, twisted around her like a trap. Ethan pulled out his pocket knife and began sawing through the tough fabric. His hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from the weight of responsibility. This woman's life was in his hands, and he was just Ethan Rivers. Nobody special, nobody important. "Wait, what's your name?" Victoria asked suddenly, her voice stronger now. "Ethan, just hold still. I've almost got it." The seatbelt gave way with a snap, and Victoria sagged forward. Ethan caught her, feeling how small she seemed, despite her obvious strength. The smell of gasoline was getting stronger. They needed to move, and fast. "Can you walk?" he asked. Victoria tried to move her legs and winced. "My ankle, ... I think it's twisted." Without hesitation, Ethan scooped her up in his arms. She was lighter than he expected, but even so, carrying another person through a broken window while rain poured down was no easy task. Victoria wrapped her arms around his neck, and for a moment, Ethan caught a scent of expensive perfume mixed with fear and adrenaline. He managed to get them both out just as he heard sirens in the distance. Someone else had finally called 911. Ethan carried Victoria to his truck and set her gently in the passenger seat, then grabbed a towel from behind the seat to press against the cut on her forehead. "The bleeding's not too bad," he said, though he wasn't really sure. He had learned basic first aid in one of the foster homes from a former paramedic who had taken in troubled kids. It was one of the few useful things anyone had ever taught him. Victoria was staring at him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. Her eyes were a striking green, the color of money, and they seemed to be memorizing every detail of his face. "You saved my life," she said quietly. Ethan shrugged, embarrassed by her directness. Anyone would have done the same thing. "No, Victoria," said her voice firmer now despite her injuries. "They wouldn't have. Most people would have driven right past." The ambulance arrived then, followed by fire trucks and police cars. Ethan watched as the paramedics took over, lifting Victoria onto a stretcher with professional efficiency. She never took her eyes off him, even as they loaded her into the ambulance. "Wait," she called out just before they closed the doors. "What's your name again?" "Ethan Rivers?" "Thank you, Ethan Rivers. I won't forget this." The ambulance pulled away, its sirens fading into the night, and Ethan was left standing in the rain beside his broken-down truck. A police officer took his statement, praising his quick thinking and bravery, but Ethan barely heard the words. He kept thinking about Victoria Sterling's eyes, about the way she had looked at him like he was someone worth remembering. 3 days later, Ethan was stocking shelves at the warehouse when his supervisor called him to the office. Standing there, looking impossibly elegant even with a bandage on her forehead and a walking cast on her ankle, was Victoria Sterling. She was even more intimidating in the fluorescent light of the warehouse office. Her business suit probably cost more than Ethan made in 6 months. She carried herself with the kind of confidence that came from being used to having people listen when she spoke. The warehouse manager was practically bowing as he introduced them. "Mr. Rivers," Victoria said, extending her hand. "I've been looking for you." Ethan wiped his hands on his work shirt before shaking hers, acutely aware of the dirt under his fingernails and the sweat stains on his clothes. "How are you feeling, your ankle?" ... "It's healing. Thanks to you." Victoria's grip was firm, and she didn't let go immediately. "I wanted to thank you properly. I wanted to ask you something." The warehouse manager excused himself, clearly, sensing that this was a private conversation. Victoria waited until they were alone before continuing. "I've been thinking about what you did for me," she said. "About the choice you made to stop, to risk your own safety, to help a stranger. Do you know how rare that is?" Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "I just did what felt right. Exactly. You acted from instinct, from character. That's not something that can be taught." Victoria paused, studying his face. "I have a proposition for you, Ethan. I'd like to offer you a job." The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. "A job? I already have a job. Not like this one. I want to offer you a position. At Sterling Industries, entry level, but with real opportunities for advancement. Good salary, benefits, the chance to build a career." Ethan stared at her in disbelief. "I don't understand. I don't have a college degree. I don't know anything about business. You're just what?" "It's just someone who would risk his life for a stranger. Just someone with integrity and courage." Victoria's voice was gentle but firm. "Ethan, I've been in business for 15 years. I can teach someone to read a spreadsheet or manage a project. I can't teach someone to be a good person." "You already are one?" The offer was beyond anything Ethan had ever imagined. A real job, a real future, the chance to be something more than just another foster kid who fell through the cracks, but it felt too good to be true, like a dream that would vanish. The moment he reached for it, "Why would you do this for me?" he asked. Victoria smiled, and for the first time, Ethan saw past the CEO exterior to the woman underneath. "'Cause 3 nights ago, you gave me my life back. Now I'd like to give you yours." She handed him a business card with her direct number. Written on the back, "Think about it. But don't think too long. The world needs more people like you, Ethan Rivers, and I intend to make sure it gets them." After she left, Ethan stood in the warehouse office staring at the card in his hands. Victoria Sterling, Chief Executive Officer, the woman he had pulled from a wrecked car, the woman who had just offered him a completely new life. Part of him wanted to call the number immediately, to jump at the chance she was offering. But another part, The part that had been disappointed and abandoned so many times before whispered warnings about being careful, about not getting his hopes up. He thought about Victoria's words, about being a good person. All his life he had been told he wasn't good enough, wasn't smart enough, wasn't worth investing in. Foster families had given up on him, schools had written him off, and he had started to believe them. But Victoria Sterling, a woman who could have anyone working for her, had seen something different. That night, Ethan sat in his cramped apartment and stared at the business card until the numbers blurred. Outside his window, the city hummed with life and possibility, with all the things that had always seemed just out of reach. For the first time in his life, someone had opened a door for him. The question was whether he had the courage to walk. Through it, he picked up his phone and dialed the number on the back of the card. Worlds Collide. Victoria Sterling's office occupied the entire top floor of the Sterling Industries building. 50 stories above the bustling streets of downtown, floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, and the furniture was the kind of sleek, expensive pieces that belonged in design magazines. When Ethan stepped off the elevator on his first day, he felt like an alien visiting a different planet. He had spent the weekend shopping for work clothes with Victoria's advance on his salary, but even his new suit felt foreign on his body. The tie was too tight, the shoes too stiff, and he kept catching glimpses of himself in the building's mirrored surfaces, wondering if everyone could tell he didn't belong. Victoria's assistant, a professionally polite woman named Jennifer, led him through a maze of cubicles and conference rooms to Victoria's office. The CEO was standing at the windows when he entered, her silhouette outlined against the morning sky. She turned as Jennifer announced him, and Ethan was struck again by how commanding her presence was. "Ethan, welcome to Sterling Industries." Victoria crossed the room and shook his hand, her grip as firm as it had been in the warehouse. "How are you feeling? Nervous?" Terrified, Ethan admitted, then immediately regretted his honesty. Victoria laughed, a genuine sound that transformed her entire face. "Good. If you weren't scared, I'd worry you didn't understand the opportunity you've been given." She gestured for him to sit in one of the chairs facing her desk, then settled across from him. Without the barrier of the desk between them, she seemed more approachable, though no less impressive. "I've been thinking about where to place you," Victoria said, opening a folder with his name on it. "You have excellent instincts and strong problem-solving skills, but you're going to need training in the technical aspects of the business." "Going to start you in our community outreach division?" Ethan frowned. "Community outreach?" Sterling Industries has contracts with several local organizations that help at-risk youth. Housing programs, job training, educational support. I think your background would be valuable there. You understand what these kids are going through in a way that most of our employees can't. The assignment made sense, and Ethan felt some of his anxiety ease. Working with kids who had grown up like he had was something he could do, something he understood. "There's something else," Victoria continued. "I want you to know that this isn't charity, Ethan. I'm not offering you this position because I feel sorry for you or because I owe you a debt. I'm offering it because I believe you can excel here. That means I'm going to expect excellence from you. Are you prepared for that?" Ethan met her gaze steadily. "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Jennifer will show you to your office and introduce you to your supervisor, David Martinez. He's been with the company for 8 years and knows the community programs, inside and out. Listen to him, learn from him, and don't be afraid to ask questions." As Ethan stood to leave, Victoria added, "And Ethan, I know this world is new to you, but don't lose sight of who you are. The qualities that made you stop to help a stranger are the same qualities that will make you successful here." Over the next few weeks, Ethan threw himself into his new job with the same determination that had gotten him through 22 years of instability and uncertainty. The Community Outreach Division was different from the rest of Sterling Industries. The offices were smaller, the dress code more relaxed, and the atmosphere felt more like a non-profit than a Fortune 500 company. David Martinez turned out to be a former social worker who had transitioned to corporate outreach 5 years earlier. He was patient with Ethan's questions and generous with his time, explaining not just the what of their programs, but the why behind them. Sterling started these programs when she became CEO, David explained as they visited a youth center. In one of the city's rougher neighborhoods, she said business had a responsibility to give back to the communities that supported it. Not everyone on the board agreed, but she pushed it through anyway. Ethan watched as Victoria herself arrived. At the center for a scheduled visit, she moved through the crowd of teenagers with easy confidence, asking about their programs, listening to their stories, remembering names from previous visits. This wasn't a photo opportunity or a publicity stunt. She genuinely cared about these kids, and they could sense it. "Why did she really hire me?" Ethan asked David as they drove back to the office. David glanced at him sideways. "You mean besides the fact that you pulled her out of a burning car?" "The car wasn't burning. It was leaking gas and electrical systems were sparking." "Close enough?" David was quiet for a moment, then said, "Look, I've worked for a lot of executives. Over the years, most of them talk a good game about caring, but when it comes down to it, they're more concerned with their bottom line than their community. Victoria's different. She sees potential, where other people see problems. That's why she hired you, and it's why these programs work." As the months passed, Ethan began to find his footing in the corporate world. He developed a reputation for being able to connect with the young people in their programs in ways that other staff members couldn't. He understood their anger, their distrust of authority, their fear that any good thing in their lives would be temporary. He'd felt all of those things himself. But it was his relationship with Victoria that surprised him the most. What had started as gratitude and obligation gradually evolved into something deeper. She began stopping by his office regularly, not just to check on his progress, but to get his perspective on new initiatives. She valued his input in a way that no one ever had before, treating his opinions with the same respect she showed her. Senior executives. "I have an idea I want to run past you," Victoria said during one of their weekly meetings. They had moved beyond the formal structure of boss and employee, though Ethan was always conscious of the vast differences in their backgrounds and positions. "What is it?" "I want to expand our mentorship program, pair some of our employees with kids from the youth centers, not just for career advice, but for life guidance. I think you'd be perfect to help design it." Ethan considered the proposal. "It could work, but you'd need to be careful about the matching. Not every executive understands what these kids are dealing with. That's exactly why I need your help. You could help us identify the right employees, train them on what to expect." As they discussed the details, Ethan found himself studying Victoria's face, noticing the way her eyes lit up when she talked about helping others. The way she gestured with her hands when she was passionate about something. She was beautiful, of course, but it was more than that. There was an intensity about her, a sense that she attacked life with the same energy she brought to business. "Ethan." Victoria's voice broke into his thoughts. "You were saying something about background checks?" Heat rushed to his face as he realized he had been staring. "Right?" "Yes. Background checks would be essential." Victoria noticed his embarrassment. She didn't show it. But there was something different in her expression, softness that hadn't been there before. Their relationship began to shift in subtle ways. Victoria started inviting him to lunch meetings that weren't really about business, asking his opinion on matters that had nothing to do with community outreach. When she worked late, which was often, she would stop by his office and suggest they grab dinner together to continue discussing their projects. Ethan knew he was walking a dangerous line. Victoria Sterling was not just his boss, but one of the most powerful women in the city. She moved in circles he could barely imagine, attended charity galas and board meetings and country club functions. He was still the foster kid from the wrong side of town, even if his clothes fit better now. But there was something in the way she looked at him, especially when she thought he wasn't paying attention, that made him wonder if maybe the differences between them weren't as insurmountable as they seemed. The turning point came. 6 months after he started at Sterling Industries, Victoria had invited him to a company function, a charity auction for one of their partner organizations. Ethan had protested that he didn't belong at such an event, but Victoria had insisted. "You're part of this company now," she said, "and this auction is raising money for programs you helped design. You should be there." The event was held at the city's most exclusive hotel, in a ballroom that could have housed half the youth center. Men in tuxedos and women in evening gowns mingled over cocktails and hors d'oeuvres that Ethan couldn't pronounce. Felt awkward and out of place, despite his rented tuxedo. Like a fraud who would be exposed at any moment, Victoria found him standing alone near the silent auction tables, studying a vacation package he could never afford. "Having fun yet?" she asked, appearing at his elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. "Loads," Ethan replied dryly. "I love standing around pretending I understand what foie gras is." Victoria laughed, the sound drawing glances from nearby guests. She looked stunning in a midnight blue evening gown that highlighted her eyes and made her seem to glow under the chandeliers. "You know," she said quietly, "I used to feel the same way at these things." Ethan looked at her in surprise. "But you were born into this world." Victoria shook her head. "My father was a mechanic. My mother cleaned houses. I got here through scholarships and student loans and working 3 jobs while I earned my MBA. She took a sip of champagne, her eyes distant. "The first corporate event I attended, I was so nervous I spilled red wine on a board member's wife. I wanted to disappear. Revelation changed everything Ethan thought he knew about Victoria Sterling. She wasn't the privileged heiress I'd imagined, but someone who had climbed her way up from circumstances not so different from his own." "What changed?" he asked. "I realized that I deserved to be here just as much as anyone else. Maybe more, because I had to fight for it." She turned to face him fully. "You deserve to be here too, Ethan. Not because I brought you, but because you've earned your place." Before Ethan could respond, the auction began, and they took their seats at a table near the front. Throughout the evening, Ethan found himself watching Victoria in action. She bid strategically on items that would benefit the youth programs, made small talk with donors and board members, and somehow managed to make everyone feel like they were the most important person in the room. But it was during the live auction, when a weekend at a luxury mountain resort was being offered, that everything changed. The bidding was spirited, with several couples competing for the prize. When it seemed like the winning bid had been placed, Victoria raised her paddle. $5,000, she called out clearly. The auctioneer recognized her immediately. $5,000 for Ms. Sterling? Do I hear $5,500? The bidding continued for several more rounds, but Victoria's determination was evident. When the gavel finally fell, she had won the weekend getaway for $7,000. "That was generous," Ethan said as the applause died down. Victoria smiled mysteriously. "I have my reasons." It wasn't until they were leaving the hotel that she revealed what those reasons were. As they waited for the valet to bring her car around, Victoria turned to Ethan with an expression that was both nervous and hopeful. "Come with me," she said simply. "What? The resort? This weekend? Come with me." Her confidence seemed to waver slightly. "If you want to, that is. I know it's presumptuous of me to assume... Ethan stared at her, trying to process what she was asking. The implications were clear, and they changed everything about their relationship, their professional dynamic, their future. "Victoria," he said slowly, "are you sure about this?" "I'm not. I mean, people like you don't usually... double quotes, people like me." Victoria's voice was sharp. "What does that mean?" Ethan struggled to find the right words. "You're Victoria Sterling? You could have anyone. Why would you want someone like me?" Victoria stepped closer to him, close enough that he could smell her perfume, see the gold flecks in her green eyes. "Because you're the man who stopped in the rain to save a stranger. Because you're the man who cares more about helping kids find their way than climbing the corporate ladder. Because when you look at me, you see Victoria, not just the CEO." Her hand found his, fingers intertwining. "Because when I'm with you, I remember who I used to be before I became so focused on success that I forgot what really mattered." Ethan looked down at their joined hands, at the contrast between her manicured nails and his calloused fingers. The boy in him, the one who had learned not to hope for too much, whispered warnings about the impossibility of their different worlds. But the man he had become, the one Victoria had helped him see in himself, knew that some chances were worth taking. "Yes," he said quietly. "I'll come with you." Victoria's smile was radiant, transforming her face from beautiful to breathtaking. Really, though I should probably warn you I've never been to a luxury resort before. I might embarrass you." Victoria laughed and squeezed his hand. "Ethan Rivers, you could never embarrass me. You saved my life in more ways than one. Now maybe it's time we saved each other." As they drove through the city lights toward an uncertain but promising future, Ethan thought about the night 6 months ago when he had pulled a stranger from a wrecked car. He had acted from instinct then, from a basic human impulse to help someone in need. Now, as Victoria's hand rested on his knee and her voice filled the car with plans for their weekend together, he realized that sometimes the people you save end up saving you right back. The rain had brought them together, but it was everything that came after that would define who they became together.